Well, I just had a wonderful conversation with Chase Koch. His father, Charles Koch, is one of the most successful industrialists in the country and in the world. And growing up in that environment, to hear his personal story of how he grasped the value of work, how he identified with who he could be without trying to compare himself to his father or to others or to be overly influenced by what others thought he should be, and to find he's just took a wonderful time of sharing his journey and how he's applying it. Not only just sharing his journey, but then how he's working to apply the things that he's learned along the way and the work that he's doing. So not only does he find out what he's best at, but he's committed himself to helping others find out what they're best at and changing communities one principal social entrepreneur at a time that can connect to one person at a time. So it's just a fascinating conversation. I hope you will find it as fascinating as I did. I took a lot of notes actually, kind of going through it. So I'm really excited for you to share it with you.
We believe, and have always believed in this country, that man was created in the image of God, that he was given talents and responsibilities and was instructed to use them to make this world a better place in which to live. And you see, this is the really great thing of America.
It's time to discover what binds us together, and finding it has the power to transform our world. That's what I believe. How about you? Chase, thanks so much for taking the time to join us here on Believe. And it's so fun to have a chance like this to connect with you. And as we were saying earlier, a chance to just go a little bit deeper and a chance to share your story with a lot of other people.
Absolutely. It's great to be here, Doug. And you guys have been what we call preferred partners, where with Stand Together specifically. And it's been great getting to know you and the family. And we definitely have aligned vision for the future and aligned values in how we get there. And everyone brings a lot to the table. So I appreciate, your relationship.
Yeah, it's good fun. And Chase, it's the connection kind of started with our parents. Your folks, my folks, a number of years ago in some of the early Stand Together things. But developing a relationship with you and getting to know you and your story has been so important. To me, to watch you, because we've kind of have a bit of a parallel track with parents who've kind of had some good success in their lives, and as we kind of followed them and align with those values and visions, but yet find our own path. And so that's what we'd like to talk a little bit about and kind of focus around. But to start, I'd love you to kind of unpack your path. And one of the things that that we've talked about before is, when you were younger, you were a star tennis player on the track of expanding nationally, and then that had a bit of a stop for you, and you had a different experience when you made a decision there. Talk about that part of your life and how to me, that seemed pretty important for how you started to deal with disruption in your life and taking different inputs and how it kind of shaped you.
Yeah, no, that time in my life, I was 15 years old, and it was truly a game changer that kind of set me on a new path. And just the background on that is, my parents outside of education were always focused on, hey, pick a sport wherever you have a gift and like really go all in on that, because you can play that sport the rest of your life. You'll learn so much from teamwork, playing on a team, and really like putting everything into it and see how you can do it and learn about competition. And so for me, I tried a lot of different things. From baseball, I was terrible. Soccer, I wasn't good at pretty much everything until they put a tennis racket in my hand. I had decent eye-hand coordination. So I started playing tennis, and that was kind of the thing that I did, especially in the summers. And by the time I was 12 years old, I was nationally ranked. And I think that year I was top 100 in the country and really invested pretty much all my time in it. But like a lot of younger junior tennis players, you get burned out, right?
Yeah.
And it's an individual sport as well. And I just got fried, to be honest with you.
Sure.
And I got to the point where I'll never forget my mother, God bless her, would take me to all these regional matches and go to every single tournament with me. And one of the tournaments, I normally make it to the quarterfinals or semifinals. I had a horrible attitude, and by the second round, I was like, I just want to get out of here. I just want to lose this match, get out of this tournament, and go home and hang out with my friends. And so I did that, and she was so devastated because she knew I wasn't giving it my all.
Yeah.
And I get off the court, and she's like, "We're gonna have to talk to your father." When we get back to the house, I knew I was in deep,
Uh-oh.
and, so he said, when I got back to Wichita, I said, "Son, why don't you come up to the office and have lunch with me? I want to have a discussion with you." And I remember going up to the office. It was a 5-minute meeting. There was no lunch there whatsoever. And he said, "Son, your mother tells me about your performance on the tennis court and your horrible attitude. And I'm going to give you, basically two paths. You make the decision. You either give 100% on the tennis court and give it your all, or I'm going to get you a job. You're not going to be basically a country club kid. I'm not going to let you go down that path." And I said, "I'm so burned out on tennis. I'm really fed up with it. Give me a job." And I thought I'd have this cush kind of job at a clothing store working 9 to 5 and still with the ability to hang out with my friends and stay in Wichita and all that. I'll never forget that the next morning after I had that meeting with him, he had all my stuff packed. This old beater pickup truck shows up at the house and he said, "Son, get in the car. You're gone for the rest of the summer." And that was, beginning of the summer. And I hopped in that car, and about 5.5 hours later, I show up in Syracuse, Kansas, where it's one of the nation's largest feed yards. We owned cattle feed yards at the time. We were in that business. And I didn't know anything about it until I showed up at the feed yard. And I'll never forget just rolling up there with the feed yard manager. And, we lived in a single wide trailer that summer. And I lived with I'll never forget him. His name was Kelly, and he said, "You're going to sleep on the couch. You're going to pay me $350 a month. You're living with me for the rest of the summer. We start at 5 a.m. tomorrow, and we work 7 days a week. Any questions?" And so that was my like welcome to Koch Industries moment. Right?
There you go.
The first time I'd ever had a job too, and what I learned from that was just the value, first of all, the value of a dollar, right, in your first job, but also what work ethic really is. But the most important lesson I took away from that was how to work with other people from all diverse backgrounds, and it was such an incredible experience building camaraderie at the feed yard. There was like 15 of us that worked there. It was 55,000 head of cattle, so there was a lot to do. There was a lot to do,
Yeah.
a lot of dirty jobs, as you can imagine. But, I just remember the way I felt about myself prior to that job and the way I felt about myself going back into my sophomore year in high school. Like, I actually did something this summer. I actually, produced, added value. I worked, I made some money, like, and I felt good about myself. And, it was kind of that my grandfather told my father, many years ago. He said, "Son, I hope you feel the glorious feeling of accomplishment."
Yeah.
Because that's when you'll be able to look in the mirror and really, really feel fulfilled and like yourself. Right. And so that was my first experience in like understanding, even as a kid, the value of work and how you feel about yourself as a human being.
That's such a great short. Thank you for sharing that, because it's so, it's so important. You had the choice of which path you wanted to go on, and you didn't maybe choose the exact definition of the path, but you went there, and you took from it everything that it had to offer and more, and then applied it to your life going forward from there, and you had that glorious sense of accomplishment. I love that phrase, because we all need that in life. We all need that purpose and that meaning.
Well, the other
And
thing is I'm gonna make sure Koch Industries gets back into feed yards for my kids. My kids are
that's
only 11 and 9, but I'm gonna start them early. So
that's right.
you know,
There you
we need to get back in that business.
There you go. Well, it has to happen generation to generation, doesn't it? To have that glorious feeling of accomplishment continue on. So take it forward a little bit. As you kind of grow, you get into start working at Koch Industries, and there's a perceived pathway for what Chase Koch should do, and what pathway you should be on. But again, you had to find at that sort maybe a few more choices, and a few more definition from you about the pathway that you wanted to be on. Talk about that a little bit, and how you found your way to the area where you're focusing on today with Koch Disruptive
Oh yeah,
Technologies.
I'm happy to share. And it's been a windy path. And once I graduated from college at Texas A&M, I did not want to go back into the family business. I had worked every summer from when I was 15, that first job that I described, all the way through, I think, my junior year in college. We worked in the refineries. I worked in gas liquids plants. I worked in logistics, truck racks. I did a lot of like manual labor stuff, and I was like, I don't know if that's for me.
Yeah,
And
right.
so I graduated. I moved to Austin, Texas. I worked for a marketing firm for a while, and it was actually I was playing in a band for the first time. I loved Austin, Texas, and I went there
Yeah,
because the music, like just music, just kind of pumps through my blood. I love it, and I wanted to be around that scene, but back to the whole glorious feeling of accomplishment, I wasn't feeling fulfilled with what I was doing. And so that's what pulled me back into Koch Industries. Like, I have an incredible opportunity to go back to Koch, to actually learn from my father, learn from these executives that have built this amazing company. And I'd squander a huge opportunity if I decided I just don't want to work in the business. So it took a little bit of maturity to get
yeah,
there. But then, I came back into the business, and I had a lot of different jobs because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And the thing that I'm so thankful for as I look back over the course of my career, my father never pushed me down some track. There was never the word grooming never came into the picture, right? And I'm so thankful for that. And the reason why, if you go back to our principles, it's about really discovering what each of our individual gifts are, right? He
sure.
wants the company to organize their role and follow a career path that aligns with their gift, not because, well, my last name's Koch, so I should work towards this CEO path, right?
Right.
And sadly, a lot of family businesses that's like the only option, right? And it's like, well, what if the next, the next person kind of in line in the family isn't cut out for that?
Right.
And this is why, you read the stats in terms of family businesses, and I think it's 92% of family businesses ultimately fail by third generation or start on
Exactly.
the. And so the way to mitigate that, or at least what my father and our company and the way we think about it from a philosophical standpoint is really align your role around your gifts. And so I was down this windy road of having a lot of different roles at Koch and failing at a lot of them, frankly, to discover where my real passion is and where I could create the most value, but also where I really loved my job. And so I think one story that really kind of summarizes it all, there was a lot of different jobs throughout, it's all the way since I was 15, last pretty amazing 30 years
Yeah.
of experience through this journey. But I worked in, I wanted to learn one of the businesses from the ground up. Coke today has about 11 different business lines and unique operating businesses. And so I wanted to learn one from the ground up and really learn everything from supply chain, trading, sales, manufacturing, the accounting part of it, and like really get my hands dirty. So I worked in the fertilizer business, separate from the feed yard. This is actually making nitrogen fertilizers and trading phosphates and potash globally. I had all various roles across that business for 9 years. And about, 6 years into it, my boss at the time said, you know what, you've run a lot of the smaller businesses within Koch and you've really proven yourself. You should run the whole thing. You should be the leader of Koch Fertilizer. It was a large business. It was, it is still, we still, it's a very key core business to Koch Industries. Thousands of employees operating in 30 countries. And so I had this amazing opportunity to really take the leadership role to run this company. And I remember about 9 months into it thinking, this is not for me. Like really optimizing this beast of a business and running it day to day with these large operating assets, thinking about manufacturing, reliability, and safety and all that. Like that really, I wasn't good at it, one. And two, it wasn't where my heart was. And so 9 months into that role, I'll never forget walking back into my boss's office and basically firing myself and saying, like, Steve, I am not the right guy. There's another person that is the right leader for this. And, he's earned the job and this isn't good for me. This isn't good for the business, not good for the team. And I want to go over and work on all like these innovative fertilizer and what's going to be, kind of the future of the industry. And you can imagine once I did that, how humbling that is, though, right?
Sure.
Because here I am, the boss's son, and on this track to be CEO of the fertilizer business, and who knows where that leads me with a next step after that. And after 9 months, I'm walking around the halls going like, he failed. I felt that way. But what I realized was that was like one of the greatest blessings in disguise for the future, because by firing myself, I realized like being true to myself and where my heart was and where I thought I could actually make a difference and add the most value was around innovation. And I mean, I've always had this idea of creative destruction. My father, it's core to Koch Industries' vision.
Yeah.
It's Joseph Schumpeter's idea of disrupting yourself from within before the market disrupts you. We all know the stories of companies that, try to protect their core product or core business and they don't want to change and they end up a dinosaur, right? And so this really kind of is part of, the heart and soul and DNA of our company and why Koch has continued to grow and change so much over the years. And so that's part of who I am as well. What I realized was I want to be part of that next curve. Whatever the next technology is that could disrupt our core business, like nitrogen fertilizers, I want to be part of that. Whether it's data science, AI, enhanced efficiency fertilizers, whatever that thing is, what's going to be part of the future that has high growth potential. And so that was the decision I made. And I went from a business that was probably, I think, the third largest profit driver of Koch Industries to one that was losing money. And everyone's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I think this is what the future is, right? And so I ran a business called Koch Agronomic Services that looked at highly innovative fertilizers so farmers could do more with less, apply less nitrogen, but get more out of it, given the technology that we acquired. And then that led me down the path of spending more time in Silicon Valley and New York and Boston, where all these tech hubs were, and getting exposed to these new models that were going to really disrupt the way the whole ag industry functioned. And I just got excited when I was around all these founders that were bringing, new ideas from different industries and building companies around it. I'm like, why are we not part of these companies? And we weren't in venture capital at the time, but when I got exposed to all these amazing founders, I thought to myself, wow, Koch Industries has this incredible laboratory. We touch the majority of the economy. And And we can help these companies unlock their potential and help them grow faster than maybe a standard venture capital firm could by giving them money, but also bringing this Koch laboratory to them in ways that could help them as a customer, as a subject matter expert, across all these industries and help them really build their business, but also use our philosophy, principle-based management, and what built Koch to build their company. And so I just stumbled into that when I was running Koch Agronomic Services and had the idea to build a new platform for Koch Industries called Koch Disruptive Technologies, which is precisely that. It's basically the venture capital arm of Koch Industries, but basically delivering our kind of capabilities in laboratory in a highly differentiated way. And I started that in 2017 and really built an amazing team around that. So that's my primary responsibility at Koch Industries today.
Yeah. Chase, you have just outlined so many critical elements for all of us to apply in our lives. And the whole idea of this podcast it was based on my father's book, Believe. What do you believe? And encouraging people to believe something. And most important thing is to believe something about themselves, and not have all the outside influences tell Chase Koch what you should do in Koch Industries or how you should do it, but for you to make your decisions. And just like everybody who's listening here, to firing yourself, not being afraid of failure, from following your passion, from pursuing this idea of creative destruction, where certainly in the marketplace it's well known, but what are the things we need to do in our own lives? That I do this habit, this pattern day after day after day. Is it really going to get me to where I want to go? And so you've just, I just want to call out for everybody how you have just outlined so many things, and I hope everybody is able to take that and apply it in their own life in their own way.
Oh, what I
Because
outlined there, Doug, was a lot of failure, right? And but it's I owe my parents so much because they taught me that that is part of the experiment of life and trying new things and figuring out just what's important is figuring out what you don't want to do, right? To narrow in what you do want to do and really discover it. I wish I would have figured that out earlier in life. I mean, and I'm still learning today. It's not like I haven't figured it out. You
we
never,
all are.
but but by understanding kind of those principles of, my father's big on Maslow and his idea of what you can be, you must be, and that's at the
Right.
individual level, right? And like back to the point of so many families or family businesses think about, well, Chase, you should do this or you should do that. Your father's built this, so like you have all this opportunity. But like I'm an individual person. I'm different than my father. I have different skills, different passions, different things that I want to do. So really, the biggest I think one of the biggest gifts that my parents both gave me is the gift of permission
Yeah.
to basically go cut your own path. You have this platform, but there's so many different opportunities, and go like design like where you think you can make the biggest contribution to Coke and like really love what you do. And like that's what I want my kids to see in me as well, is like I'm not in a role where they see that I'm not happy, right? Because I
Right.
want to look at that and say, well, Pop does this and that, and he's in music, and I see what he does and Stand Together, and he's really organized his life around, his own North Star, not what someone else thinks it should be, right? And maybe just one more comment on that, because I think this is a huge learning for me, and I credit my sister for this as well. You know, my father and my mother taught us both all of these principles that we're talking about. But what she taught, I think she taught all of us, is that having clarity on what your personal North Star is.
Yeah.
What is your purpose? And when I think about, this packaging the idea of self-actualization around, an individual gift, but then also thinking about, okay, well, how do I make decisions and what I spend time on and what I don't? She was the one that really helped me define my North Star. And this is an iterative thing, right? It's not a one and done. Oh, I got the perfect
Yeah.
North Star. It's up
Right.
on the wall and life is great. This has been an iterative thing for me. But what she helped me discover is if you understand where your gifts are and like what you're good at and what you're not, and then design a North Star of your purpose around what you want to do with those gifts. Mine became kind of three words that summarize what I learned about myself: unite, disrupt, and empower. And when you put all that together in a statement, um, I basically, like, all the decisions I make, I want to put through the idea of I want to unify people around disruptive solutions that ultimately empower people.
Yeah.
And so it's a very basic statement, but I can make a lot of decisions with that and what I do and what I don't. And like my whole life kind of tears up to that statement. And what I've learned in all my failures and what, are the things that I decided that I didn't want to do. And then this became kind of that North Star for me. And so the pillars underneath that are, of course, family first, and my kids, and helping them discover their own North Star with their gifts. But then when you think about like the organizations I'm involved with and what I do, it's kind of three pillars: um, technology, social change, and music. And so I'm at like the intersection of all that, but I tier up all the decisions I make within that to that North Star of unifying people around the most disruptive solutions that ultimately empower people. And so we talked about the first one, technology, and my role with Koch Industries. And the second one's around social change, where you and I work together, around Stand Together. There's a lot that I've done to bring in kind of disruption and build Stand Together Ventures, Stand Together Music, different organizations that tier up to that North Star to drive social change that ultimately empower people. And then the last one around music, because music has been, such a powerful force for me and what I've seen, whether it's going to shows or playing in a band or whatever. It's the universal language that unifies people. And so not only playing in a band, but figuring out how to do that in a way that can bring awareness to issues that actually help people and empower people. That's kind of like my high level North Star, and like where, again, it's taken me 46 years old now. It's taken me 46 years to kind of figure out this, and it'll keep changing. But that's where I'm spending my time, across those three pillars.
In one sense of simplicity, these pillars, these foundations, but they guide everything you do in your life. But the other element that you talked about was, the permission to explore and the permission to fail. And so many times in life, if we have one failure that crushes us, I can never find the next path. But most of the stories, all the stories of success, are shaped by somebody's failure. In sports and arts and business and anything, people lose before they win a lot. And in life, we can go through that. So talk now. Let's pivot. I'm gonna take your points here. Let's pivot and talk about Stand Together. So you've taken this approach of creative disruption, or creative destruction and disruption, primarily through technology, into industrial and a marketplace through Koch. But boy, if there's ever tradition or established norms, if you will, it's in the social world around us. And solutions that maybe somebody thought of 20, 30, 50 years ago that aren't really producing results or helping people. And so the whole idea of Stand Together, and maybe start with your role there and how you came from this idea that to a certain extent our parents kind of shared, but you've taken it, and this I attended your Stand Together Ventures event, was just so much fun, and you combined it with Stand Together Music, and you've put those pieces together. I'm at a table with Aloe Black, doing a business plan for a new business venture as part of an exercise. I'm like, how did I get here? How in the world did I get here? And here's, you're with Greg now and some other friends. You have a practice session for, your music here pretty soon, and talk about that journey and how all these things you learned in your life, your 46 years, and how they're kind of playing out and how you're seeing them happen, in this new way.
Well, maybe just for the listeners, just a brief background on Stand Together and what it is, to give context.
Please do, yes.
For these different pieces that I'm involved with and really driving. But Stand Together is this really unique community of, call it, over 1,000 business leaders that has been built over the last several decades, that this community all rally around the idea that every human being has a gift. And we talked about that, right? It all starts with like, what is an individual's gift? That we're all different, but how do we help people unlock their potential of the gift that they were born with? And we all know that there's so many barriers that are stacked up against people across society, across the world. Stand Together is a U.S. Focused organization, but barriers such as a broken education system, K through 12, barriers such as poverty, addiction, violence, mental health in communities, regulatory barriers that are holding people back, a broken criminal justice system where we lock up 25% of the world's inmates and we only have 3 or 4% of the global population. Just tremendous barriers that are stacked against giving people a second chance on life, like the criminal justice system does today. Healthcare as well, right? Barriers within healthcare where nurses and doctors can't work across state lines, regulatory barriers to help people because of the bureaucracy that's in place, right? So anyway, those are all barriers that stand in the way of progress for people to unlock their potential. And Stand Together's purpose is to figure out where we can basically remove those barriers, right? Where we have capability and we've demonstrated that we can partner with people in communities that see a better way, right? Maybe I'll give one or two examples, and obviously you share some examples. You're a critical leader in this, Doug, but one that I like to go to that is such a wonderful example of what Stand Together is all about is within the barrier of overcoming addiction. Addiction rates, especially during COVID, skyrocketed, right? And the numbers are in a really bad place in this country. And we've got the fentanyl crisis and so many sad stories out there. But 6 or 7 years ago, we ran into what we call a principled social change entrepreneur, Scott Strode, out of Colorado Springs, that found a better way to overcoming addiction. He struggled with alcohol and drug addiction over the course of his life, and he had someone that cared about him and helped him get out of the ditch through exercise. He got on a bike, he put on boxing gloves, got in a gym, and shifted his whole mindset into making himself better. And that worked for him. Doesn't work for everyone, right? But that method worked for him. And what his insight was, boy, what if I build a gym, call it the Phoenix, the whole idea of rising from the ashes, right? And build a growing community around folks that are struggling with it, but they can combine the power of community because they're in isolation, right? Now they have people around them that have the same problem they're working through. They work through it together in a community, but then combine that with the power of exercise. And so fast forward, he built 2 or 3 gyms. And when we met him, we saw the results he was getting. his relapse rates for people that were going through his program were something like 10% or lower, which is an order of magnitude better than some of the best care and the best programs in the country.
Right.
So back to what I was saying before in terms of my personal North Star, the things I gravitate to, things that are highly disruptive. This is a disruptive model versus the existing alternatives. And we think about it almost like from a venture capital standpoint. How do we find a principled social change entrepreneur, just like a founder that's building a new technology company?
Right.
And how do we empower them with capital, but also the principles of what built Koch Industries to scale what he built, what Scott built in Colorado Springs, all over the country. And I think one of the biggest takeaways, tell me if you agree with this, of Stand Together, the ultimate vision is to create movements.
Right.
And so
Completely aligned. That's the whole point. You got to create movements.
Yeah. So how do you, because I mean, we want to help in these various communities and cities, but how do you take the learnings from Colorado Springs and where Scott found a better way and basically take that across the country? And so that's what we've done, leadership from folks like you and close to 1,000 other business leaders that are all looking for, like a place where they can really do good and see the results with the money they're putting in or their time that they're putting in their backyard where they want to build a Phoenix themselves. And so, this community comes together and they see the results of what they can do and the scale and the capabilities that are there. And over the course of 5-6 years, we've gone from 3 gyms to something like, I think we're at 85, 90 gyms. We're touching people in all 50 states. And now over the last couple of years, we've partnered with the music industry, folks like Live Nation, AEG, Oakview Group, iHeartMedia, that because music is so impacted by addiction, that they feel like this is a problem we can get behind. We can put this in our venues. We can bring more awareness to the Phoenix and what Scott's doing. And so we've created a movement called 1 Million Strong that, I mean, going from 3 gyms 6 or 7 years ago to a movement touching 1 million people and ultimately, hopefully becoming a standard of care in helping people overcome addiction. It's an incredible story. And it just, the more people that are aware, more people want to get involved because they see the real results and how it transforms people's lives.
I'll just to hit on that. Recently when we were together at a Stand Together event, hearing people talk about the fact that at a music festival where people who are in recovery said, I can't go back there because that's where I was drinking, but they can go to a place through 1 Million Strong, through your work in this effort. Here is a alcohol-free zone in the center of the festival. Yeah. Everyone come here. This is their safe spot, but you can still enjoy your passion for music and you can still be with all the people, but you're in a place in the support that it's gotten from organizers and from others in the industry. That just
well, not only that, the support is there obviously at concerts, so people can have that experience and not feel that stigma and feel like they have a community there to support them. But more importantly, I think, is when everyone at that concert, whether they're struggling with addiction or not, they have someone in their life that probably is.
Sure.
Right. And they see, God, I saw this thing in the Phoenix. They're talking about it from the stage. And my brother or my best friend's going through this. I'm going to point them to the Phoenix because it's now nationwide. That's what's exciting, to make this really go viral, right? And it is. And the music industry and all these music leaders and artists that are involved are driving that movement.
Yeah, and talk a little bit and expand a little bit about your role, because as you said earlier, music's personal to you.
Yeah,
you're in a band. You have a band, and you guys are good, and you're working it. And so you talk about, being on stage is setting yourself up for potential failure all the time, right? And putting yourself out there. You're practicing, you're performing, but you're becoming who you want to be, and you and the connections that you've made throughout the industry are touching people's lives in a very, I don't know if unexpected is the right term, but a very unique and different way, rather than this problem, throughout the country, but certainly in the industry. Now there's a solution that everybody can get behind. It's just
Well,
fascinating to me.
it's been, we started as an experiment, right? And this is the value of experimental discovery. Another one of our principles that's so important, whether it's in business or whether it's to stand together and innovating and figure out new ways to create these movements that we described. Um, Stand Together Music was an experiment, and it started during COVID. And I remember it was Omar Jawar, who's the leader of Urban Specialists out of Dallas, very close friend of mine, and he was one of the nation's top voices on equal rights, and just one of the most amazing people in the world. And then John Harden, who was he worked within Stand Together, and I worked with him quite a bit, and we both played guitar. We loved music. The three of us all love music, and we're like, we are missing a huge opportunity to bring the power of music and combine that with the power of the Stand Together platform. And the reason it came up during when COVID hit was we're all on Zoom trying to figure out, okay, like how can we help people that are going through this during this time? We're all isolated. And what we recognized was that musicians weren't on tour, obviously, that had all been shut down. How do we really help artists, empower them to do good with their voices, with their reach, with their social media following, given what we had at Stand Together? And so Omar had a lot of friends in the artist community in the music industry, and we just started doing these online shows. We called them Stand Together, Jam Together, and
They were good. They were
yeah,
good, by the way.
you were kind to jump on some of those shows with us,
Yeah.
but we had an amazing show with one of the first shows we did was on addiction because of the skyrocketing rates. And I remember Matt Sorum, who is a friend of mine, he's the drummer for Guns N' Roses. He jumped on and he was incredibly vulnerable and told his story of battling and overcoming addiction and how he was 13 years sober, and he got on and he played 3 or 4 Guns N' Roses songs, and like it was just unbelievable.
Powerful, so powerful.
And then another show we did was on criminal justice reform and equal rights. And Omar was friends with Snoop Dogg, and my father and Snoop see eye to eye on kind of the war on drugs and the whole criminal justice reform that needs to happen. So I was like, Omar, can you get Snoop, and we'll see if my father can interview Snoop on Stand Together, Jam Together. And he made it happen. They had an incredible conversation. And what we learned through all that, we did like 10 shows or something, was like once COVID kind of opens back up, did we prove out the hypothesis that artists really want to be a part of something that can help them take their voice and drive incredible change with it? We had the platform, right? We have the criminal justice capabilities, we have education, addiction, poverty, and artists don't have those platforms themselves. So like if we offer that to them and really help them spread their voice and like get involved, not just in a, hey, come play this one show where we want to highlight the Phoenix or whatever. They want a long-term partnership because they care so deeply about these issues. And so that's when we came out of COVID, we had this community of artists through Stand Together, Jam Together, the virtual shows that turned into something really special. And then I spent a lot of time working with the music industry, and I talked about the various companies and leaders that have jumped on board, and it's a pretty easy sell, right? So you talk about like, here's what you can do with your platform with Live Nation or AEG, and they're like, sign me up. Let's experiment. Let's figure out what we can do together. And so this becomes a virtuous cycle, right? Where if you're really creating mutual benefit and everyone's helping each other and you're part of this big community, there's like no limit to what it can turn into. And it's grown exponentially. And we're doing the same, as you know, because I spend a lot of my time in the technology world. We have Stand Together Music, which we just talked about, but I created Stand Together Ventures, which is really all the folks that I work with in the tech world that are interested in jumping in and driving social change with their transformative and disruptive ideas they're pointing at business. We now have this tech community that's part of Stand Together, which I think is a really important part of the future, because they bring such disruptive new ideas. But then we're not stopping there. We have Stand Together Sports. Deion Sanders out of Dallas helped launch this. He was one of the first ones from the NFL to jump on. And then Sean Alexander, Demario Davis, all these amazing players that have huge hearts are jumping in with us. We're starting to work with the NBA. We've worked with LeBron James Foundation on education with his amazing school and what he's building in Akron. And then Stand Together Music, but also Stand Together Media as a completely new area. And we have some really exciting partnerships that are probably too early to talk about here. But it's just the reason, what's the why behind all that? If you take music, sports, entertainment, media, technology, I've always believed that those are the segments of society that are really have the most influence on culture and the next generation. I mean, obviously everyone's on social media and they follow the people that they like, whether it's an artist or a sports star or whatever. So you really need to have authentic connections and partnerships. If we're going to drive these movements, we need to have partnerships of influence and high potential to really do the most good that we can. And so I think that's a huge part of Stand Together and what we're doing going forward.
I love it. And as you reach out, you're seeing these examples of how people can be genuine, in or giving them a chance to be genuine when that's what they want to do. That's their heart, but it's hard to do in their defined industry or their defined part of business or the role that they may have. This gives them an outlet to really as we talked about earlier, find out where their passion is and where they want to be in the same way. But that can apply even if you don't have a huge social media following. You've got a neighborhood, you've got some friends, you've got people in your community. And so talk a little bit, and you've talked about the movement piece, this whole idea of bottom up versus top down. And that is essential to movements. So while there's a North Star, there's a strategy to guide, kind of some of the organization that you're doing around a platform, it's really the people that are on those platforms or coming there that are making it happen. It's you can help a Scott Strode, but Scott started it, and now all those 90 gyms around the country, there's people who are making that happen. So help us understand a little bit of that idea of how it gets to each individual person to define their potential and to make a decision.
Well, I mean, this is what I've learned in working with all these entrepreneurs like the Scott Strode, and Scott is one of the greatest examples of you kind of have two alternatives to approach addiction. You can create a bunch of rules and laws and have people in nice looking suits tell people what to do from the top, and we see the results that come from that, as opposed to someone that has been in the problem, that has experienced it before. Instead of thinking about them, well, they're the problem and they need to be fixed.
Right.
Look at them as the source of the solution to the problem, because they know the problem better than anyone. That's what we mean by bottom up. And Scott's a great example of that. I would say another great social change entrepreneur, and I mentioned Deion Sanders before. This is where we worked with him for the first time, was around a social change entrepreneur that had an idea to create a restaurant to disrupt juvenile justice in Dallas, Texas. And Chad Hauser is another great example of supporting someone with a great idea to drive change and completely disrupt the system. So the quick story there with Chad was he saw an opportunity to create a restaurant and take the basically some of the toughest, most troubled kids out of the juvenile system in Dallas and work an arrangement with the DA and said, send them to me because I'm gonna show them that they are not throwaway kids and that I believe in them, and I'm gonna teach them how to greet someone at the door, cook a meal, clean a restaurant, um, look someone in the eye, wait on tables, and that sort of thing. And he named as a restaurant Cafe Momentum. And Chad had that idea himself. No one from the top was saying this is how we fix the juvenile justice. It's an entrepreneur that has a better idea, and now the NFL is getting behind this and expanding from not only Dallas, but the goal is to go to all 32 NFL cities, and where there's an NFL team, and it's just another example of if we empower people, we remove barriers, and guys like Chad, Scott Strode, there's so many examples in the
So many.
communities. As we've got 250 different social change entrepreneurs we've supported with new, better way solutions on poverty, addiction, violence, mental health, you name it. I'm just giving you a couple examples, but that's what we mean, right? When we say bottom up, that is the way. That's how we find a better way. That's where all the innovation comes from. That's how new companies get started, right? Again, we don't have an agency in the government saying this company needs to be started in this. It comes from a new idea that comes from a different industry, and you can't plan this stuff out, right? And so we treat social change and some of the most intractable problems in society the same way.
Create the conditions where somebody can thrive in finding that solution. Someone who's closest to the problems, you create the conditions, and then you come around them and support them, and then take it to the next level. And I think it's important, Chase, as you talk about all these things, it just hits in my mind. One of the things that I've tried to do, following your lead, is to say, okay, how do we take that idea and bring it here? We have a couple friends in the restaurant industry that are like, okay, how do we create we're not an NFL city, but how do we create Cafe Momentum in Grand Rapids? It might look a little different. It might not be the exact same, but it takes that idea and we make it our own, but we still have a positive impact in the lives of kids who have potential, who are not throwaways, who can learn skills and build a life in a new way because someone's going to invest in them. And so I think the main thing is you talk through all these elements. I hope everyone listening and watching can see how these are ideas that we all can do in some way, shape, or form, and go through the journey in the same way like you have. And that's the idea of staying together. That's going to, because we're all kind of close to the challenges we face in life.
Well, no, to your point, and you and I have talked a lot about, can you do this around a city or a specific community, and kind of a place-based approach like what you're trying to do and lead in Grand Rapids. We're also trying this in Wichita as well. Can you really get a groundswell of taking models like the Phoenix Cafe Momentum, urban specialist around gang violence, and like really help bring that to one city and see if you can like tackle a lot of these problems at one time. And as we know, and as we've studied, place-based approaches haven't worked that well in the past. And a lot of it is what you were talking about before on top-down thinking versus bottom-up. We can't sit back and say, we have a master plan for a city and we're going to fix it. I mean, that's just not the way it works, right? It's a bottom-up strategy where there are entrepreneurs that understand the nuances of the problems in these various communities. And all these cities are different, right? They all have their own kind of specific issues that they're working through. So you can't say, well, this is what worked in Dallas, now I'm going to rubber stamp this everywhere in the country. And every time that's been tried, it doesn't work. You have to have people, entrepreneurs, principled social change entrepreneurs that understand that city, and they have the relationships. They know who to pull in. And that's why our approach, and that from a place base and what you're doing in Grand Rapids is, let's go find those entrepreneurs and figure out where the biggest problem is, and let's support them, let's help them, let's bring a community around them, and then hopefully from there, like we talked about before, a virtuous cycle come. Then you get more private donations come in. It's like, I see the Phoenix or Cafe Momentum. I see at the ground level what's actually happening. I see these kids, their lives transforming, right? And then so more money will come in from donors, more entrepreneurs pop up for the next problem, and then it's like this virtuous cycle in a community that that takes off. So anyway, look, I think we both have a lot to learn, and we're trying and we're experimenting different things in our own communities. But if you have that experimental mindset and then combine that with bottom up, it's pretty exciting about what the potential is. And to your point, anybody can get involved in that wants to, right? Have some kind of role in that.
Yeah, Chase, I could sit here and talk for hours more about what you're doing and just seeing the way you are taking the lessons of your life and applying them in a way that has huge impact in the lives of others to help them realize their potential fully. I'll give you the last word here. I know I hate to say it, but we probably have to wrap it here.
Sure.
But are there any other maybe closing thoughts that you might have as we go through your journeys, the value of work, your career, and then how you've taken those principles that you've learned, but you're living them and you're helping other people apply them as well. Any other thoughts? I just think it's so helpful to maybe
well,
share as we wrap.
I think it's so cool. The name of your podcast is Believe. I think it's such it's a great, and it's so core to how we think about things, and even our partnership with you with Stand Together. And this is maybe this sounds a little bit corny because my father and Brian Hooks wrote the book Believe in People. Right. If you think about all these principles that we talked about, it comes back to every human being has a gift. How do we help them remove barriers so they can unlock their potential? Let's believe in them and help them, right? And so anyway, I just wanted to kind of tie that out with what your objective is, I think, with this podcast and getting these principles and these ideas out there, that we can all believe in people, and that we can help people through in mutually beneficial ways. I will tell you that being involved in Stand Together has transformed my life in ways that I never thought I could be part of something like this. These movements, I didn't get it 10, 15 years ago, sure, right? Yeah. But now, seeing the results and seeing the people that we get to help on a day-to-day basis, there's nothing more rewarding. It is it's a glorious feeling of accomplishment when you see someone that's been through these things, and you see a better way, and you kind of help them get to the other side. Maybe I'll there's one other quick story, just a personal story, and interactions with my father over the years. This has always stuck with me. This was about the same time that I was really struggling in my role as leader of the fertilizer business. I think it was 2014, and I'll never forget the chair I was sitting in. I was at a wedding celebrating someone's marriage, and sitting across from him, he looked at me. He could tell I was not in a good place. And he's like, son, what's up? And here we are in the middle of this party, and we're chatting about this real stuff. And he said, I was like, Pop, I'm just not in a good place with my job, my work. I don't feel like I'm adding value. I don't want to be that guy, right? And he's like, I look at what you've accomplished, and I don't think I'll ever be able to accomplish that. And he just said, just stop. Just the thing that you need to remember is that, back to this thing of every individual has different gifts. He's like, don't compare yourself to me. Don't compare yourself to anyone. The only person you can compare yourself to is who you were yesterday. And that has stuck with me so deeply since he said that to me. And it's helped me. It's that permission that, I was talking about, instead of living a life of, well, I should be doing this. This is what society thinks I should do. To hell with all that. It's about like who you are as an individual, and you're going to be able to make the biggest impact, whether it's in business or philanthropy, with your family or whatever. If you're true to yourself and just compare yourself to who you were yesterday, and have this lifelong learning of self improvement, that's what's going to lead to, I think the best life. I've had a lot of trials and tribulations. I've told my stories or whatever, but that's one that is very private to me, but that stuck with me. And like I share with anyone that I care about that's going through the same thing. It's like, stop comparing. And we live in this society of social media, looking at, well, look at the great life they have. And it's like, forget all that, right? It's like, how do you make yourself better every day? And that's just really stuck with me, and I think is a great principle for that I keep learning from, and I hope others do too.
Yeah, well, that's incredibly personal. It's incredibly powerful, and it applies to all of us, right? We all can get outside-in pressures, and we can all, be unhappy because of comparisons. But
Yeah.
really, it's all about, believing in. When you believe in people, it means you believe in yourself. When you believe in yourself, you can believe in others. And Chase, you do such a wonderful job of expressing that and living that. And I'm grateful for you taking the time to share it with us and to walk us through. Very, just so vital for all of us to challenge our thinking so we can believe in ourselves and believe in those around us, and see by your example how that's happening.
Awesome. Well, Doug, thanks for having me on. This was fun, and let's do it again.
Let's do it again. All right, Chase, thanks so much. Thanks for taking the time. Have a great jam session.
Thanks a lot. See you, Doug. Bye.